Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we always get requests to cover like the heavy hitters of different spiritual traditions, and I think this one definitely qualifies. We are diving into Allan Kardec's The Spirits book.
Big one.
A big one, yeah. But we're going to do something a little different. We're focusing specifically on his introduction.
Mm.
And I think we can all relate to wanting to just like skip to the good part.
Yeah, totally.
But stick with us here because there's a reason, a good reason, to really unpack how Kardec lays the groundwork for what he's going to say in the rest of this book.
Yeah, it's like, what was he thinking? Why did he write this book? And what can we learn from that process, even if, we don't consider ourselves, full-blown spiritists?
Yeah, and right off the bat, Kardec goes full-on dictionary mode.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time defining his terms, like he knew there would be confusion or debate. For example, he very clearly distinguishes between spiritist and spiritualist.
Yes, and I think that's a really important distinction because spiritualist, is pretty broad, right? This means you believe in something beyond the material world.
Right.
But spiritist, as Kardec uses it, that's a very specific kind of engagement. It refers to someone who's looking at the existence of spirits, how they communicate their impact on us, on the world.
So it's like you're not just like, oh, yeah, I believe in something. Right. It's like, no, I'm talking about spirits right here, right now. And then he just like throws down the gauntlet, tackles the soul,
Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest concepts out there.
Definitely.
I don't know about you, but I was a little surprised by how he approaches this. Did you find that like unique?
Well, he doesn't just give us like one definition, right? He lays out 3 different ways to understand the soul. You have the soul as the principle of life, the soul as this spark of like universal intelligence, and then, and this is the one that really hit me, the soul as this independent moral being that survives after death.
That survives, yeah.
And that right there, you can see how that sets the stage for everything else he's going to talk about. The spirit world, our connection to it.
Yeah, it's like, hey, even this word soul that we use all the time, maybe we don't really have a handle on it.
Right, exactly.
Before we move on, I think we should mention a couple other terms he uses that are kind of important to understanding where he's going with all this vital principle and perispirit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those are key. So the vital principle, that's like the life force that animates everything, all living things. But the perispirit, that's something different. That's specific to the spirit. It's kind of like a semi-material body that the soul uses to interact with both the material and the spiritual realms.
So like a bridge almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, like a bridge.
Okay, so he's building his vocabulary, right?
Right.
But even with these super clear definitions, I mean, he knew he was stepping into some pretty controversial territory.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it feels like he spends almost more time addressing skeptics than he does, actually explaining his own ideas.
That's a really good observation.
Yeah.
He knows he's going to get pushback. So a good chunk of this introduction is almost like preemptively tackling criticisms, right? Like, for example, he talks about table turning.
Oh, yeah. That was all the rage back then.
Right. And rather than just like accepting it or dismissing it outright, he really digs in. He says, we need to observe this. We need to investigate this.
Like real scientific method?
Exactly. And he even says, if you just dismiss something as fraud or chance without really looking at it, well, that's just not intellectually honest.
It's like he's calling out, like, the scientists of his day and saying, hey, don't just scoff at this. Do the work. So I guess my question is, why do you think he was so careful, almost obsessed with getting ahead of these potential criticisms?
Well, if you look at Kardec's background, before he was Mr. Spiritism, he was a teacher. He was a researcher.
Right. He was very researched. Right. Exactly. And he was known for being very logical, very meticulous, always wanting evidence.
Show me the data.
Right. And I think that way of thinking, it's woven into the DNA of this book.
Makes sense.
He doesn't want to just present mystical ideas. He wants to present like a solid, well-reasoned argument that can stand up to scrutiny.
He wants to bring the receipts.
Yes, exactly.
And you can really see that when he starts talking about the evolution of spirit communication, right? Like from these simple table raps to like full-blown written messages. What stood out to you about this part of the introduction?
Well, I found it fascinating that Kardec suggests that the whole idea of spirits, like the concept itself, didn't come from from some pre-existing theory. It actually came from the communications themselves.
Oh, so it's like the spirits were driving the bus, in a way.
It's almost like that, yeah. Like they were revealing themselves through these interactions, saying, hey, we're here. This is who we are.
That's a good point, because I think a lot of people assume that he started with the idea and then tried to find evidence.
Right.
But he's saying it's the other way around.
Exactly. And that's where the role of mediums becomes so important.
Right. This is where it starts to get really, I guess, for some people, maybe a little spooky, right?
Yeah.
He's like, okay, so we have these spirits talking, but they're using these mediums to do it.
Right.
Now, he doesn't shy away from, like, the potential problems there.
Yeah.
Like fraud.
Yeah, absolutely. He spends a good chunk of time addressing skepticism about mediums and, pointing out that, yeah, there could be fraud. There could be the medium's own thoughts influencing things.
Right.
But then he makes this really interesting point. He says, look at the content of these messages. Often they go way beyond what the medium could possibly know.
So he's like, there's got to be something else going on here.
Exactly. And he even talks about different types of mediumship. You have physical mediums who can produce like physical phenomena. And then you have intellectual mediums who communicate through writing or speaking.
So he's really like laying out the landscape.
Yeah, he's saying, okay, this is a complex thing. There are different ways it manifests.
And he's not saying, just trust these mediums blindly.
No, not at all. He's encouraging us to think critically.
Yeah, even as he's like presenting these pretty radical ideas.
Exactly.
Okay, so he's defined his terms, he's addressed the skeptics, he's explained how the spirits communicate, and then it's like he finally pulls back the curtain and gives us this glimpse into the spirit world itself.
Yes.
Like, okay, what did he learn from the spirits about their realm?
Well, one of the biggest ideas he presents is this. Spirits aren't static beings. They're not just stuck in some eternal state of, bliss or damnation.
Right.
They're on a journey.
They're on a journey, yeah.
Of evolution, constantly progressing, moving through different levels of spiritual awareness and understanding.
So it's not just like heaven or hell. It's like there's this whole other process happening.
Yeah. Exactly. And that process is closely tied to the idea of reincarnation.
Okay, yeah, he talks about that a lot.
He says that spirits don't just exist in some far-off realm. They come back, they incarnate into physical bodies, they experience life in the material world, they learn, they grow, they make mistakes, and through all of that, they evolve.
It's almost like every lifetime is a building block.
Yeah, exactly. Like a stepping stone on this journey towards greater awareness and understanding.
That's a pretty wild concept, when you think about it.
Yeah.
But if spirits are like constantly evolving, I mean, does that mean that they're all good? Because I've seen enough horror movies to know that like vengeful spirits are a thing.
That's a good question. And it's one that Kardec doesn't shy away from. He acknowledges that not all spirits are, benevolent or wise.
Right.
Some are still attached to earthly desires and passions. They might be holding grudges, seeking revenge, or just, lost and confused.
So it's not all harps and angels on the other side.
No, not necessarily. He even describes like a hierarchy of spirits. Okay.
With some existing on like lower levels of spiritual development.
Oh, so some are kind of still working out their issues.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the ones who might be more prone to negativity or even, causing mischief.
Okay, so that definitely raises the stakes a bit. I mean, if we're opening ourselves up to the possibility of spirit communication, how do we make sure we're not, like, inviting trouble into our lives? How do we protect ourselves from those negative influences?
Well, Kardec is really big on the idea of discernment. He says, don't just blindly trust every message or every spirit that comes knocking.
Okay, so don't be gullible, basically.
Right. He's saying we need to evaluate the content of the communications, see if they align with higher moral and spiritual principles.
It's like, don't check your brain at the door just because you're dealing with the spirit world, right?
Exactly. We need to apply the same standards of logic, reason, and ethics that we use in our everyday lives. And he goes even further, suggesting that our own thoughts and intentions actually play a role in attracting or repelling certain spirits. Oh, interesting. So like attracts like.
Yeah, something like that. He argues that if we're focused on negativity, on fear, on, lower desires, we're more likely to attract spirits who are vibrating on that same frequency.
So it's like if you're putting out bad vibes, you're going to get bad vibes back.
Right. And that's why he emphasizes the importance of cultivating positive thoughts, moral conduct, and a genuine desire for spiritual growth.
So it's not just about passively receiving messages, it's about actively shaping the kind of interactions we have with the spirit world.
Exactly. We have a responsibility to cultivate our own spiritual awareness and to approach this realm with discernment and intention.
So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's not a one-way street at
It's
all.
not like just tuning into a radio station. It's more interactive than that.
Right. It's like a dance, a conversation, a relationship. And as with any relationship, it requires effort, intention, and a willingness to grow and learn.
That's a great way to put it. It's a relationship with the spirit world. And as we've seen in this first part of our deep dive, Kardec lays out some pretty clear guidelines for how to approach that relationship in a way that's both insightful and safe.
Absolutely. He's giving us a framework for understanding this complex and often misunderstood realm.
So if you're ready to explore the deeper implications of Kardec's ideas, join us for part 2 of our deep dive into the Spirits book, where we'll tackle even more challenging questions and delve further into the mysteries of the spirit world and its impact on our lives.
We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to our deep dive into Allan Kardec's introduction to the Spirits book. We've been unpacking how he meticulously defines his terms, right? Like he's anticipating all the arguments people are going to throw at him.
Yeah, he's definitely not afraid of a little controversy.
Not at all. And now we're really getting into the heart of it, right? Spirit communication. This is what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, this is where the rubber meets the road. Like, okay, you've got these spirits, they're talking, but how do we know it's real?
Exactly. And Kardec spends a lot of time addressing that, especially the argument about fraud. I mean, back then, a lot of people, especially academics, they just dismissed the whole thing as trickery.
Yeah, like mediums were just con artists, pulling a fast one on gullible folks.
Exactly. So how does Kardec respond to that? Well, he starts by saying, look, if it was just a few isolated cases, okay, maybe. But he points out that these phenomena are happening all over the place.
Yeah, he talks about how it's not just in one culture or one social class.
Right. It's across different cultures, different countries, different social backgrounds. It's too widespread to just ignore.
So he's basically saying, it's a thing, deal with it.
Pretty much. And he also pushes back on the idea that it's all just chance or coincidence. He cites all these examples of spirit communications where the information is way too specific, too complex.
Like stuff the medium couldn't possibly have known?
Exactly. It goes way beyond guesswork. So he's saying we have to at least consider the possibility that there's an intelligence at work here, something beyond our normal understanding.
Okay, so we've ruled out fraud, we've ruled out coincidence, but couldn't these communications be explained by something else? Like maybe something a little less out there?
That's a good question. And Kardec considers those alternative explanations too. He talks about things that were popular at the time, like animal magnetism or somnambulism, these altered states of consciousness where people might have unusual abilities.
So it's not just shutting down those other theories.
No, he acknowledges them. He says, sure, some phenomena might be explained by those things, but they don't explain the full range of what's happening, especially the cases where the information is completely new, like groundbreaking stuff that goes against current scientific understanding.
He's saying there's something else going on here, something we can't explain with our current models.
Exactly. And that something else, of course, is the spirit world, right? This realm of intelligent beings who can communicate with us, interact with us, influence us.
That's a pretty radical idea, especially for someone living in the 19th century, when science was really starting to take off.
Absolutely. But Kardec doesn't just drop that bomb and walk away. He actually dives into the structure of this spirit world, the hierarchy of spirits, their different levels of development and influence.
So, what did he learn from the spirits about their realm? What's it like over there?
Well, one of the most fundamental things he presents is the idea that spirits aren't static. They're not just frozen in time,
Right.
They're on a journey of evolution. They're progressing through different levels of spiritual awareness and understanding.
It's like climbing a ladder, moving up through the ranks.
Exactly. And this journey is closely tied to reincarnation, which we talked about a little bit earlier.
Right. He says that as spirits come back, they live multiple lives.
Exactly. It's not just one and done. They incarnate into physical bodies, they experience life in the material world, and through those experiences, they learn, they grow, they evolve.
So each lifetime is like a training ground, a chance to level up.
That's a great way to put it. It's like a cosmic school, right? We're all here to learn and grow.
Makes sense. But if spirits are always evolving, does that mean that none of them are bad? Because, there are all those stories about ghosts and demons and stuff.
That's a good point, and Kardec doesn't shy away from that. He says, look, not all spirits are good or wise.
Right.
Some are still clinging to earthly desires and passions. They might be holding grudges, wanting revenge, or just lost and confused.
So it's not all sunshine and rainbows on the other side.
No, not necessarily. He even describes a hierarchy of spirits, with some being on lower levels of development.
Like some are more advanced than others.
Exactly, and those lower-level spirits are the ones who might be more likely to cause trouble or act out in negative ways.
Okay, so that's a little creepy. If we're opening ourselves up to communication with spirits, how do we protect ourselves from those, less than friendly entities?
Well, Kardec talks a lot about the importance of discernment. He says, don't just blindly trust every spirit or every message that comes your way.
So be careful who you talk to.
Exactly. You got to use your judgment. Look at the content of the communications. See if they align with higher moral and spiritual principles.
Don't check your brain at the door just because it's a spirit talking.
Absolutely. And he even goes further and says that our own thoughts and intentions can actually attract or repel certain spirits.
Oh, interesting. So, if you're thinking negative thoughts, you're more likely to attract negative spirits.
Yeah, something like that. He says that if we're focused on negativity, on fear, on lower desires, we're going to attract spirits who vibrate on that same frequency.
So it's like you get what you put out there.
Exactly. And that's why he's so big on cultivating positive thoughts, moral conduct, and a genuine desire for spiritual growth. It's like creating a shield, right? Protecting yourself from negative influences.
So it's not just about passively receiving messages. It's about actively shaping the kind of interactions you have with the spirit world.
Exactly. We have a responsibility to be mindful of our own energy and intentions, and to approach this realm with discernment and respect.
So it's a two-way street, a relationship, not just a one-way download of information.
That's a great way to put it. It's a dynamic exchange, and we have a role to play in shaping that exchange.
This is fascinating stuff, and I think it really highlights the depth and complexity of Kardec's thinking. He's not just presenting a collection of spooky stories. He's offering a framework for understanding the spirit world and our place within it.
Absolutely. And he's encouraging us to approach it with a balanced mindset, combining curiosity and open-mindedness with critical thinking and discernment.
It's about using all of our faculties, both intellectual and intuitive, to navigate this fascinating and sometimes challenging terrain. But there's still so much more to explore in Kardec's introduction. Join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll delve into the ethical implications of his teachings and consider their relevance for understanding the human experience in a broader context. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Allan Kardec's introduction to the Spirits book. We've covered a lot of ground, definitions, skepticism, the spirit world itself, but there's this whole other layer that we need to talk about, and that's the ethical dimension of all this.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because Kardec doesn't just present Spiritism as like this cool, mysterious thing.
Right.
He really tries to frame it within a moral and philosophical context, almost like he's aware of how these ideas could be, I don't know, misused or misinterpreted.
Right, it's not just about, ooh, spirits are talking.
Yeah.
It's about, okay, so what? How does this knowledge change the way we think about ourselves, about our actions, about our place in the universe? And one thing that really struck me was his emphasis on personal responsibility. The idea that, what we do matters. And not just in this life, but across multiple lifetimes.
Yeah, it's like karma on steroids.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, the stakes just got a lot higher.
Right, and he ties this directly to the idea of reincarnation. He's saying each lifetime, it's not just some random thing. It's an opportunity, a chance to learn, to grow, to fix past mistakes.
To level up your soul.
Exactly, to become a better, more compassionate, more spiritually evolved being.
And he's saying that this journey of self-improvement, it's not separate from our interactions with the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
They're connected. The spirits we attract, the messages we receive, they're a reflection of our own inner state.
It's like a mirror, showing us what's going on inside.
Whoa. Okay, that's kind of trippy. So it's not enough to just passively wait for some great spiritual awakening to happen. We have to actively seek it out.
Right, we have to do something.
Yeah, we have to cultivate those qualities within ourselves that will attract those higher spiritual influences.
So if you get out of it what you put into it.
Right. And Kardec's big on this balance of faith and reason. He's not saying just believe everything blindly, but he's also not saying be a total skeptic and shut it all down.
It's about finding that middle ground, that sweet spot where you're open to possibility, but also using your critical thinking skills.
Okay, so be open, but don't be gullible.
Exactly. Because true knowledge, whether it's scientific or spiritual, it's not about dogma. It's about seeking truth through observation, through reasoning, through an open
And
mind.
about being willing to, like, expand your understanding of what's possible.
Exactly. And that brings us to, I think, one of Kardec's most radical and also, kind of controversial ideas.
Yeah.
This idea of continuous spiritual evolution.
Whoa, okay, break that down for me.
He's saying that our journey doesn't just end when we die, right? It continues in the spirit world. And it might even go beyond that to some level of existence that we can't even really comprehend right now.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is. It challenges everything we think we know about life and death, about heaven and hell. Kardec is presenting this vision of a dynamic, ever-evolving universe where consciousness just keeps going and the possibilities for growth and transformation are, like, infinite.
So, like, there's no finish line. We're always becoming.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's inspiring, but also a little bit scary,
Yeah, because it means that, like, our choices really matter. They have consequences that ripple out beyond this one little lifetime.
And it's not just about our individual growth either. Kardec talks about how we all contribute to this collective evolution of humanity.
Oh, wow. So it's like we're all in this together.
Exactly. He saw Spiritism as this force for positive change in the world, something that could help move us towards a future where love and compassion and understanding are, like, the dominant forces.
So it's not just about what happens to me after I die. It's about how we all live now, how we treat each other, how we contribute to the greater good.
Right. It's a call to action, an invitation to participate in this amazing unfolding story of consciousness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Kardec's introduction, I think we're left with a really big question. If we accept this possibility of continuous spiritual evolution, if we really believe that our actions have consequences that reach beyond this lifetime, how does that change the way we live? How does it change our priorities, our relationships, our whole understanding of what it means to be human?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's one that each of us has to answer for ourselves. But I think Kardec's introduction, it gives us some really valuable tools and insights to help us on that journey.
It's a reminder that there's more to reality than meets the eye, that our potential is limitless, and that we have a role to play in shaping the future, not just for ourselves, but for all of humanity. So thank you for joining us on this exploration of Allan Kardec's The Spirits book. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to continue your own journey of discovery.
Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.